This is Beechwood, the 63-room Newport mansion of the late Mrs. William Astor, Queen of New York society. It's now the home of a unique school run by one of these three men. What is your name, please?
My name is Norman Robert Ford.
My name is Norman Robert Ford.
My name is Norman Robert Ford.
Only one of these gentlemen is the real Norman Robert Ford. The other two are imposters and will try to fool this panel. Tom Poston, Peggy Cass, Orson Bean, and Kitty Carlisle. On To Tell the Truth with your host, Bud Collier.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and welcome again to Tell the Truth. Good evening, panel.
Good evening, Bud.
Always a joy to be with you. We're brought to you by Winston Filter Cigarettes. Panel, open up your envelope, if you will, please. You just got them, I see, and I'll wait till you get the contents in your hand, and then I'll read my copy of it, the one marked number 1. Okay. You ready, Kitty?
Yep.
Right. I, Norman Robert Ford, live and work in my 63-room mansion called Beechwood on fashionable Bellevue Avenue in Newport, Rhode Island. The house was built in 1851 on 8 acres and was for years the home of Mrs. William Astor. From Beechwood, I run a unique school in which I have enrolled some 5,000 students across the country. While most instruction is carried on by mail, I do hold individual conferences and group seminars at Beechwood. The curriculum of the school is one I developed myself. I teach only one subject, the force method of horse race handicapping, or how to increase your winnings at the track. Signed, Norman Robert Ford. Now, panel, these three gentlemen all claim to be Norman Robert Ford, professor of horse race betting. We'll start the questioning with Peggy Cass. Peggy?
Well, I think it's splendid if you could really do that job. Number 2, how do you enroll?
By advertisements in newspapers in large cities.
I see. And number 3, what is the Daily Telegraph?
Daily, you mean the Morning Telegraph?
Yes, the Morning Telegraph.
That is a paper that gives you all the facts and figures on past performances and current entries in horse racing.
Number 1, do you use the telegraph figures or the racing form? The daily race?
I use the telegraph.
Thank you. Number 2, who's Lawton?
Lawton is a card handicapper.
Thank you. Number 3, where's the Preakness run?
Preakness is run in Bowie.
Thank you. Number 1, where is the Wood Memorial run?
In New York.
Thank you. Number 2, they just programmed for a new track in New York. Could you tell me what that is?
Unless you mean the sort of rehabilitation of Belmont, I don't know.
Thank you.
Orson Bean.
Yes, I wonder if there's ever a soft moaning from the vicinity of the Astor family crypt. Number 3, isn't it kind of odd to be teaching handicapping in a fine big mansion like that? Why do you need such a sumptuous locale for your school?
Well, I use it in my use it in my conferences, my daily conferences, and my seminars. But I don't use it to teach.
Oh, it's just...
Teaching is mail order.
All right. Number 2, who are Joe and Asbestos? Joe and Asbestos.
Joe and Asbestos are members in a cartoon by Ken Kling.
All right. Number 1, what exactly is handicapping? I mean, what does the word mean, and what is it?
To handicap, try to figure or select the right horse to bet on in a particular race.
But why is it called handicapping instead of best horse picking or something?
I don't know.
Number 3, do you know?
It's a good question, but...
Kitty Carlisle.
Number 3, were you born in Newport? Is that why you settled there?
No.
Do you have any connection with it?
Not really, no. I like it.
Thank you. Number 1, who is Ward McAllister?
I don't know who Ward McAllister is.
Number 2, who is the publisher of the Morning Telegraph?
I think his name is Annenberg.
Number 3, what is Havre de Grace, if that's the way you pronounce it?
It's a racetrack.
Where is it?
It's in Maryland.
Number 1, you have no students on the premises at all?
not living in residence. but they-
Number two, how many servants do you have to run this establishment?
At present, I have only 1.5.
That whole big thing?
That's right.
It must be pretty dirty. Number three, how far are you from the beach?
I am approximately 3 or 4 blocks.
And what is the beach called?
The beach is Bailey's Beach.
Thank you.
Tom Poston.
Thanks. I'd like to know what, number two, what does it mean when you say force method? What's the force method?
The force is simply the force which requires the student to select the right horse.
Is that what you call force number one?
But we're actually trying to force the student into coming to the right decision in betting.
Oh, I think I see now. Number three, do you use this method on all kinds of horse racing?
Yes, harness. It works with harness racing.
Number two, what about dog racing and things like that?
It has no effect on the dogs.
Does your method have an effect on the horses?
It seems to when it works right.
Yes, fantastic. Do you put out a sheet? Number one, do you put out a sheet?
No tout sheet.
No touch.
And that's it. Time for you now to mark your ballots. Vote now, if you will, please, panel, without any consultation between you, of course. Simply mark your ballots now without change and select number 1, number 2, or number 3. Our team of challengers will receive $250 for every incorrect vote. Are all ballots marked? Oh, quickly. All right, Tom, for whom?
I voted for number 2, Bud. I didn't want to, but I was forced to. Something.
Peggy.
Well, number 3, the Preakness was run not at Bowie, but at Pimlico. So that, and number 2 looks as though he'd do it, so I voted for 1.
Orson Bean.
Well, I was going to vote for 2, but when he said that in his 87-room house here, he has 1.5 servants, even if one was a nimble midget, I can't see how. So I voted for number 3, but I guess I'm wrong due to the shriek of
Well,
horror.
it's split so far. What are you doing to it, Kitty?
I voted for number 3, but Peggy's a racehorse expert, and I didn't know that it was run at Bowie. Pimlico. And anyway, number 2, when asked exactly why, how the people enrolled, he said through newspapers. That didn't seem specific enough to me, so I voted for number 3.
Very well, there we have it. The votes all in and the minds made up. 1 vote for number 1, 1 for number 2, and 2 for number 3. Let's find out now which one of these 3 gentlemen, in truth, is Norman Robert Ford. Will the real Norman Robert Ford please stand up?
Oh, thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Oh, boy. Number 1, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My name is Richard Davis, and I'm president of Colorcraft, the lithographic printing plant in New York City.
And number 3, with your 2 votes, what is your real name and what do you do, sir?
My name is Stanley Worth, and for the past 16 years, I've been leading an orchestra in the Pierre Hotel in New York.
Well, we checked the score to find that there were 1, 2, 3 incorrect votes. That's 3 times $250 for a nice total of $750. Gentlemen, we thank you very much for gracing this evening with your presence and hope you enjoyed it, too. Goodbye, and God bless you. Well, the panel will be right back at it in just a minute, right after this film. And now let's have our next team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is Linda Draves.
My name is Linda Draves.
My name is Linda Draves.
Panel, follow along again with your copies of this one in the next envelope, if you will. I, Linda Draves, am in charge of directing the travel of some 1,000 young Americans who this year will tour mostly by bicycle and on foot through North and South America, Europe, and parts of Africa and the Orient. I am director of travel for the American Youth Hostels. The purpose of the American youth hostels is to make available to young people with limited means a healthy, out-of-doors way of learning about the world and its inhabitants. Since its inception in 1909, the international organization has grown to some 4,000 hostels in 36 countries. These hostels provide simple, supervised accommodations for as little as 30 cents a night. With an American Youth Hostel Pass, a bike, a sleeping bag, and a mess kit, a young person can have an unforgettable summer of travel for as little as $2.50 a day. Signed, Linda Draves. Panel, these three ladies, as you heard me say, all claim to be Linda Draves, who will start the cross-examination with Kitty Carlisle. Kitty?
Thank you, Bud. Number 3, where is your headquarters in New York?
It's at 14 West 8th Street.
Thank you. Number 2, how much does it cost to join the American Youth Hostels?
Depends upon how old you are.
If you're over 17.
17 or 18 is $6.
Number 1, do you have a bulletin?
Yes, we do.
Number 2, how many times a year does it come out?
Comes out once a month.
Thank you. Number 3, are your boys and girls separated when they're sleeping in the youth hostels?
Very definitely, yes.
Well, if they're all in sleeping bags, what difference does it make?
Oh, gee.
Do you have a curfew, number 2? Is there a certain time they have to come in?
Usually it's about 10 o'clock.
And what happens if they're locked out?
Well, they try not to be.
Uh-huh. Number 1, do you serve, what kind of meals do you serve?
They have to get their own meals.
Oh, you don't serve no food?
That's right.
But you do have accommodations, number 2, for their bicycles and their gear and so forth.
Well, they keep their bicycles outside and their gear with them.
Thank you.
Tom Poston.
Well, I would like to ask, number 1, what do they do with their mess kits? Because in the fact sheet, it didn't say anything about bringing food. Can they buy food?
Yes, they buy the food there.
At the hostels?
At the hostels or at the neighborhood stores.
Thank you. Number 2, when Miss Carlisle asked you about how they get in if they're locked out, are the hostels ever locked?
Well, there's a curfew usually, 10 o'clock, and the house parents would lock the youth hostel because they find that they're tired and the kids should be in bed.
Number 3, they can lock the hostels, then they're lockable?
Yes, they are.
And what happens if a kid really does stay out past the curfew and has to knock and so forth?
He'd have to use his sleeping bag in the best available space, I'm afraid.
Yeah, after he got inside, you mean?
No, outside.
He couldn't knock and get in?
No.
Oh, gee, that's kind of rough.
Peggy Cass.
Number 2, how could he sleep in his sleeping bag if it was inside and he was outside?
I think that would be a problem.
Number 3, don't the kids, like an 18-year-old boy, doesn't he think 10 o'clock's a little early to go bye-bye?
Well, actually not, because they're generally on the road somewhere between 8:30 and 9 every morning.
I see. Number 1, does the Youth Hostel Association arrange their transportation to Europe or Africa or wherever they're going?
Yes.
Number 3, how old is the oldest old youth hostel that you'll take in? The cheap way to go, boys. How old is the oldest?
Well, the oldest we have on record was 76 years.
Oh, that's number 2.
Oh, well.
That's the second youth hostel. Number 2, you mean a girl of 29 could go and stay at a youth hostel?
Even you could do it.
What?
Orson Bean.
What'd you say?
She said even you could do it.
Well, listen, number 1, why the 30 cents a night charge? Is that to keep out the riffraff, or... I mean, obviously, you can't run a thing for 30 cents and make any profit on it, right?
That's about the size of it. They have to be dedicated people.
Number 1, I'm always curious to know with a thing like this, who started it and why? I mean, who would do such a magnanimous thing?
There's a German teacher in 1909 by the name of Richard Sherman. And he took a group of students out and realized that there just was no place to stay the night and so forth, and realized there was a need for it.
Okay, well, I'm glad you got that off your chest there.
That's it. Time for you now to put your bites down, get out of your sleeping bags, and mark your ballots. So mark them at once, if you will, please, panel. Without any change, without any discussion amongst yourselves. Just simply vote for number 1, number 2, or number 3. All ballots are marked. Very well. Tom, for whom did you vote?
Well, I voted for number 1. It isn't very clear there because I was a little tentative about it, I must say. But she seemed to know about the history, and she was very enthusiastic about the youth hostel, so I thought it was number 1.
Peggy.
Number 2 knew so much I felt she'd really boned up. I believe in number 3 because she said they're out of there by 8:30. They push them out.
Orson.
Well, I don't know. They're all very good liars, at least 2 of them. And, but I think number 1 has a kind of an outdoors. She has tweed eyes, I think, and I voted for number 1.
And Kitty.
I voted for number 1. They were all marvelous because my son belongs to the youth hostels, and he gets the bulletin, and I know all about it.
You give him the 30 cents, right?
Very well.
I thought number 1.
There we have it then, with the votes in and the minds made up. We go for the truth. We find that there were 3 for number 1, 1 for number 3. Let's find out now which one of these 3 ladies is, in truth, Linda Draves. Will the real Linda Draves please stand up? Well done, all the way down the line. Good. Oh, my. Well, that's all. Number 1, what is your real name and what do you really do? You got most of the votes.
I'm Terry Lawrence. I teach mathematics in Tuckahoe High School in East Chester, New York.
I don't know how you teach math with tweed eyes. Number 3, what is your real name and what do you do?
My name is Obie O'Brien. I'm a freelance beauty consultant here in New York.
Well, in checking the score, ladies, I'm sure you already know and have probably already spent your share of it. You had fooled right down the line. We call that skunking the panel. That's a little expression we have evolved. And that means, of course, there were 4 incorrect votes at $250 each. $1,000, ladies, and they bring you great joy. Thank you for being with us. It was great fun. Good night, and God bless you. Linda Draves has requested that her share of the winnings be given to the American Youth Hostels, and it shall be done. And now a word about Anacin. And now let's meet our 3rd team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is Dr. Herbert Axelrod.
My name is Dr. Herbert Axelrod.
My name is Dr. Herbert Axelrod.
Follow along once more, panel. You have a 3rd envelope there, and its contents can be in your hands. I, Dr. Herbert Axelrod, am an ichthyologist and possibly the world's leading authority on tropical fish. I have made expeditions in search of new varieties, can recognize some 7,000 different kinds of fish on sight, and have had more than 24 species of fish named after me. One of my books, Tropical Fish as Pets, has sold almost 500,000 copies. My company, named Tropical Fish Hobbyist, or more simply TFH, has been referred to as the General Motors of the pet world. Signed, Dr. Herbert Axelrod. Each of these 3 gentlemen claims to be Dr. Herbert Axelrod. Obviously, only one is. We'll start with Orson Bean. Orson?
Yes, number 3. What is a scrod?
I wouldn't know.
Don't know what a scrod is. Number 2, do you know what a scrod is?
It's a freshwater fish.
Yeah? Of what variety, number 2?
It's an Atlantic Ocean fish.
All right. Number 1, what is a beanfish?
I don't know.
Remember, these are tropical fish.
Well, all right.
Their area is.
I can ask what I want.
Sure you can. And usually do.
Number 3, do tropical fish eat worms?
Yes, they do.
Do they like worms?
They love it.
How do they like worms prepared, number 3? If I wanted to catch a tropical fish, would I use a worm?
No, most tropical fish are too small to catch.
Kitty Carlisle.
Number 3, are you any relation to the famous playwright George Axelrod?
Could be.
Number 2, it says here that you have a company as well as a bestseller book. What does your company consist of?
It consists of the whole work of collecting tropical fish,
transporting them to this country, selling them.
Oh, I see. It's a big business, in other words.
Rather.
Number 2, what is a piranha? Number 1, I'm so sorry.
A piranha is a man-eating fish, so-called man-eating fish.
Can he eat a man if he wants to?
I guess so, yes.
Number 2, how many kinds of sharks are there?
There are about 110 that have been classified so far.
Thank you.
Tom Poston.
Number 1, I'm interested about George Axelrod. Are you related to our famous playwright?
Possibly, yes.
Oh, you don't? Oh, I see what he meant by could be. Yes, I see. Number 3, can fish be operated on?
Yes.
Number 1, is there a danger of... well, how do you operate on a fish?
Well, I guess with a scalpel and a razor blade.
For instance, if you had fungus growing on a fish, number 1, how would you remove it?
I'd use a dye or something, swab it with cotton.
I see. Number 2, can foreign objects be planted inside a living fish and sewn back up?
It can be treated just like a human being.
Yes.
Peggy Katz.
Number 3, do fish make good pets?
Yes, they do.
And number 1, do they have like personalities? Like, you know, George will come over when he come to the tank and everything?
I'm sorry.
Say if you had a fish named George, and you went, George, would he come over?
Which number are you
Oh,
talking?
one.
Fine. I'm sorry, repeat the question. I didn't get out of
It was so long. Do they have personalities, and do they know their owners, fish?
Some fish might know their owners, yes.
Number 2, do you approve of putting the fish in those little plastic bags like they do in the fish stores?
Well, those are mostly goldfish sold in the 5 and 10s, and we don't deal in goldfish.
Well,
they're
don't you think
they're
that's
not
cruel?
tropical fish. Perhaps it is, yes.
Yes. Number 3, what is scup?
Oh, gee, I'm getting out of here.
Austin, you mustn't take these things personally.
All right, number 2, the piranhas. Is there any place in this United States where they have piranhas?
That's all the time we have. That's all the time you have, so you can swim in fear from now on because you'll never know. Time to mark your ballots, so please do so, panel. Mark them at once without change, without any consultation. Just hew to your own and mark your own, and let's have at it. No, borrow another crayon. Are they all marked? Very well. Tom, for whom did you vote this time?
I voted for number 1 because I feel that if Peggy had asked him what scud was, he would have known.
Peggy.
I asked him what scup was. It's a fish.
Scup, yeah.
I didn't think any of them knew anything, and I voted for 3.
Orson Bean.
I voted for number 3 because when Peggy mentioned scup, he blanched visibly. And the scup is the most hated denizen of the lower depths. It's a disgusting beast that attacks and devours. I don't want to go into the details.
It's the maritime cousin of the gaboon viper. Kitty.
I voted for number 1 because number 3 said he didn't know what scrod was, and it's a very ordinary fish they eat all over New England. And number 2 said it was a freshwater fish that lived in the ocean. So I snapped it completely.
They live in a little plastic bag.
Float around in the ocean. Well, it's evenly split this time. There are 2 for number 1, 2 for number 3. All right, we'll find out now which one of these gentlemen, in truth, is Dr. Herbert Axelrod. Will the real Dr. Herbert Axelrod please stand up?
How do you like
You know, for a subject matter of tropical fish, I never heard so few questions asked about tropical fish in my whole born days. Number 2, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My real name is Lou Stoneman, and I'm the writer, director, producer of a new motion picture called Image of Love.
Success with it. And number 3, you got half of the votes. What is your real name and what do you do, sir?
My name is Ted Buchwald, and I own and operate Femina Beauty Salon here in New York.
Well, the score shows a good, healthy job of 50% pooling. That means there were 2 incorrect votes at $250 each for a total of $500. Gentlemen, we thank you and hope you had as good a time as you seem to. We certainly did. Good night, and God bless you. Right now, let's take time out for a brief film. Back in a minute. Wherever there are Americans in uniform, the USO is there to show that you care. So support the USO through your United Fund or your community chest. Don't forget that. Good night, panel.
Good night, Bob.
Thanks for the fun, and good night to you for Winston. Be sure to be with us again next week at the same time, and of course I'll join you tomorrow afternoon on the daytime show. But in the meantime, don't you forget to tell the truth. Bye.
To Tell the Truth is a Mark Goodson, Bill Todman production. To Tell the Truth has been brought to you tonight by Tempo Filter Cigarettes. This is Johnny Olson speaking. For To Tell the Truth, the program was pre-recorded.